Good afternoon. It's good to join you all. In a few moments, we're going to sign into law a piece of legislation that's going to allow us here in the state of Wisconsin to extend unemployment benefits to individuals here in the state for an additional 13 weeks. I want to particularly thank a number of lawmakers who are here who both champion this bill as authors as well as championing the bill in the committees that they chair. Got State Senator Van Wanggaard, the author in the State Senate, and the chair of the committee went through there, and his counterpart, Joan Baldwin, State Representative, who was both the Assembly author and whose committee went through, and also joined by Representative Nylands and Representative Stone, and Secretary Bombach, and Executive Assistant Maxwell joining us from the Department of Workforce Development. In a moment, I'm going to sign it into law, but I wanted to highlight why this is a good day for people all across the state of Wisconsin. This bill really is the final step of something we started out asking for back in April. We looked at the ability that on the good side of things, when unlike other states, because of some of the good news we've had lowering unemployment compared to where we were a year ago and compared to where the other states were, Wisconsin at that point after mid-April was not eligible without legislative action to have an extension of unemployment benefits. We asked at that time the Unemployment Insurance Panel Council that historically has looked at these issues to take action. We asked repeatedly for them to take action, and at the time even some members of both political parties, I know, for example, Representative Barca raised concerns about them not meeting as well at that point. Well, after a lot of time and a lot of discussion, we're at a point today where we're going to sign into law the extension. It's one where, in the end, looking at the numbers that the Department of Workforce Development gave me, is it's over an estimated $88 million in new federal funds that will be available for individuals to have that extension of unemployment benefits here in the state of Wisconsin. It obviously goes from 73 weeks to 86 weeks. That will help up to 40,000 claimants who will be able to get those extended benefits over that time period. That's important, because even though we've seen in the last 6 months the economy has improved at a much faster pace when it comes to jobs than we've seen at the national level. In January through June alone, we've seen 39,300 new jobs in the state of Wisconsin. That's more than double the pace that we see at the national level. We saw 9,500 net new jobs alone in the month of June. That's even seasonally adjusted numbers, so that doesn't that accounts for permanent jobs in areas like hospitality and tourism, not just seasonal jobs that you see at the Dells and other places, all of which are important as well. But accounts for all that. So we've seen rapid growth. We see a fast pace. We see employers, both within the state and around the country, employers nationally looking at the survey and finding that the rankings that historically have had us in the bottom range between 40 and 50. We moved up 17 spots, up to 24 this year, as one of the best states to do business in the country. And we see even amongst employers surveyed here in the state of Wisconsin by the statewide Chamber of Commerce, that unlike the 10% last year who thought we were heading in the right direction, this year 88% believe we're heading in the right direction, and a solid majority of those surveyed say they're going to add jobs in the next 12 months. Having said all that, there are still plenty of people in this state who, try as they may, are still having a hard time finding a job. We're going to continue to work hard every day of every week of every month I serve in office to make sure there are many private sector jobs created in the state of Wisconsin as possible. But during that time frame, we know there are a lot of people who are working hard day in and day out to try and find a job to help support their family. And so giving them an additional 13 weeks at a time when, even though the state's economy is improving, the national economy is not improving at nearly the same pace, we need to continue to give those individuals, those workers, and particularly those families, the kind of additional coverage they need to keep supporting families here in the state of Wisconsin. So it's why it's my honor to be here today to sign this into law. A couple little technicalities. We'll sign it and then I'll take some questions. But as I mentioned, this will offer a little bit more than about $88 million. It'll be anywhere in the range of, it's 20 to 40,000, so we've said up to 40,000 individuals who will benefit from this. This will allow individuals to go back retroactive. So starting when the estimates, or when the time frame had ran out for the extended benefits on April 17th, that will continue. and the Department of Workforce Development, because they've been anticipating this, working with us in administration. We're going to be able to sign it today and start taking action in terms of helping with those retroactive benefits and looking at the future benefits as early as this Friday. So we're being aggressive because we know, particularly at the tail end, again, as much as there's signs of improvement, as much as we see a much quicker pace for job creation in the state, we still have a long ways to go to get everybody in the state who wants a job back to work again. And one of the most critical things is to make sure at the end of that time frame, as people near what had previously been the time limit of the 73 weeks, we need to make sure we give them those additional 13 weeks as we help re-energize the workforce here in the state of Wisconsin. So the other thing just to mention, and I can't repeat it enough, is for those looking for work, not only is there optimism in terms of these job numbers growing over the last 6 months, the other critical thing to remember, and this is something that often gets glossed over. For those of you in the media, I hope somewhere in your story you find a way to plug this in. But we have a website called JobCenterOfWisconsin.com. There are now some 32,000 job postings on that website today. JobCenterOfWisconsin.com. There are 32,000 job postings of employers who are looking for workers to fill those jobs in the state of Wisconsin, even as we speak now. That goes beyond potentially others that we don't even know about. But right now, 32,000 are ready, are open and ready for individuals seeking employment in the state of Wisconsin. So our hope is not only we continue to push for more things that allow the private sector to create jobs in the state, we're hopeful for those jobs that people who are looking for work, who've been on unemployment and who are hoping to find the next step to take care of themselves and their families, that they'll look at this site or they'll pass it on to a friend, a family member, a neighbor, or someone else they know who might be looking for a job right now, because the Department for Workforce Development has aggressively sought out employers and encourage others who have jobs to go to that site and help us get that message out as well. But we have jobs here in the state of Wisconsin. We just need to plug people into those as well. With that, I'll sign the bill, and then I'll come back up and take some questions. Well, and as I was just saying, I hope he doesn't mind me passing on, but Representative Nylands, representing Rock County, said it's important for Rock County, as it is all across the state. It's important not only because we're going to help those individuals who in the last couple of years have faced challenges in that county, but even more so, it's not only a sign of 13 more weeks of optimism in terms of support, it's also a sign that those numbers are going to affect Rock County, and we're going to get more people working there and in Racine County and all across the state of Wisconsin. With that, we'll take questions if you got them.
Governor, what do you tell thousands of people who have to wait a week now to feed their families?
Right now, the biggest challenge I hear from people who are concerned is the fact that they're at the end of their time period. The vast majority of people, for example, with our paychecks right now, it's a 2-week gap. So you work this week, you don't get paid for it for 2 weeks. So for individuals who would face that challenge today, they would go, like most employers, they would have 2 weeks of pay built up, so there would be no gap in between that time frame. The gap that people experience is at the tail end, where they've hit the wall with the 73 weeks. This gives them 13 more weeks. All the nonsense last week was pure raw politics. It's why in the State Assembly you saw a bipartisan vote, because in the end people understand what people need here is the extended benefits. At the front end, again, for employees, most people, there's probably some exceptions out there that get paid a week after, but most payrolls in this state are 2 weeks after folks are paid, so they're already getting.
So why then insist on that 1 week delay?
Well, that's the law. This bill had nothing to do with it. That's already the law. This bill had nothing to do with it. That's why in the original form it was introduced that way. It's not in the final version. It has no impact. That's already the law in the state of Wisconsin, just like it is in 38 other states across this country. So again, it's one of those where it's pure, raw politics. And I think it's unfortunate because the reality is these lawmakers know, in the end, there are people who are concerned, who are at the end of the rope, who need these extra 13 weeks. That's exactly what we're doing. It should never be a partisan issue. It should be something where Republicans and Democrats can agree, and that's ultimately what we're signing law today. Sir Jason?
Yeah, could you or the Secretary explain how this is going to work for people applying for these benefits, particularly for people who are applying retroactively?
Well, you had a number of people, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but a number of folks who were in the queue right back in the middle of April. And we sent out notices, explained what was going on, immediately sought action to try and change it at that time, both through the council and eventually went to the legislature on this. Those individuals would still be in the queue, so once Friday hits and all this, the last little mechanism can go in now that it's effectively become the law, is that'll go back retroactively. They'll get the benefit. If they were cut off at 73 weeks, they'll from that point forward have payments for 13 weeks out, and they'd make the payment, I presume, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, they'd pay that retroactively up until the week that we're at when the payment's made.
One lump sum payment to everybody starting on Friday. For those people that triggered off as of April 17th. Thereafter, for those that hadn't quite hit that point, they will reapply for the benefits and we'll pay those going forward.
So for people that have already hit that point and then triggered off,
Yep.
they'll receive a lump sum payment without doing anything further. For people that didn't get to it, they'll have to apply.
Wait, they'll have to apply?
As long as they qualify up to the 13 weeks. If they hadn't hit the 13 weeks, then they're going to get the lump sum payment starting on Friday.
Do they need to come to you again, or do you already have their names in the database? Or?
We don't need to get the names of those people that haven't hit the 13 weeks. Those that had not started on the extended benefits will need to make contact with us.
Okay, I didn't follow that. So whoever triggered off in April, they need to reapply for this lump sum?
No. Those that had not completed the 13 additional weeks for extended benefits will get a lump sum check from us starting on Friday. Those that hadn't even approached that 13-week period will then have to come to the department and reapply, and we will start paying those benefits.
Just so that's clear, if you hit that middle of April, that week, the 17th, that was your 73rd week. Now those individuals would be in the loop. They would be paid the lump sum to bring them up to where we're at now, and then any individuals prospectively who hadn't hit that but would be at approaching 70 the previous limit would now have the additional 13 weeks.
In other words, they remain in the queue. They haven't been eliminated from the queue.
As long as they've been filed, yeah. But if you were at, let's say, week 6 and April 17th passed, then you still had those extra additional weeks to be able to get that lump sum payment from the department.
Good. Additional questions?
Governor, you have the redistricting bill, so you can sign those.
I'm going to take a look at them. I haven't looked at the measures themselves yet, sent over from the legislature. What I'll be doing, as I mentioned before, though, is I'm not going to look at individual maps. Having been involved with this 10 years ago as part of redistricting, I know ultimately the courts will have the final say on this. So what I'm going to review with my staff and legal counsel is how the measures themselves comply with the objective standards the courts set down. It's communities of interest. It's things like maximizing minority voter participation. It's things that the courts in the past, whether it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, each time the courts have played a role in this, they've looked at those objective standards, not at the districts themselves, district by district, and I'll apply those same standards. Because I, again, anticipate this will end up in the courts, and we'd like to see that move along as quickly as possible so that all of us know where the districts are in the future.
Does any of the delay have to do with waiting for the Secretary of State to publish that first bill, the one that lets the state go first with the maps?
I haven't looked at the timing of that, but I did sign that last Monday, and obviously we'd like to have that in effect. But we haven't taken the time. We've just, in the process, I haven't even don't know for sure today whether or not we've actually received those bills themselves other than that original one. But presumably once we do, we'll carve out some time in the next week or so to take a look at the details.
Have any members of your party asked you to veto those maps, Governor?
No. Not to my knowledge. Okay, thanks, everybody.